Today, I want to talk about you and I as parents and how easy it is for us to get sucked into social media and just lose hours of our time that could have been so much better invested. If you think being a dad is filled with rewards, challenges, or headaches, and you keep pushing forward because you know this is the most important job you're ever going to do, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Dad's All In podcast. Welcome to Dad's All In podcast. I hope you're doing great out there. Hope your family's healthy and doing well. I'm just glad you're here, my friend. Today we're going to talk about social media and the effects of the algorithm that it has on us. It has an interesting way of drawing us in and sucking us in, and in the meantime, the walls could crumble around us, or our kids' events could be going on, and we are just scrolling. My college students often call it doom scrolling, and they'll talk about how I doom scrolled for an hour or two, and then I realized, man, that was not productive. I could have been doing something much better with my time. And it happens. You don't have to be a kid to have that happen. We often talk a lot about the effects of social media and screen time on our children, and rightly so. We really need to monitor how much they consume and what they consume. But today I want to talk about you and I as parents and how easy it is for us to get sucked into social media and just lose hours of our time that could have been so much better invested. But I also want to say, like everything, it can be done well in moderation because there's some positive aspects of social media too. If you want to go on to Facebook and check out what kids in your community are doing and the things that are happening at your kid's school, or maybe you just want to find out something that is important or even funny or just makes you feel better about life, you can find that. That information, that content is out there. And you can get on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Reels and find all kinds of cool stuff that will make you feel a little bit better. However, your favorite social media app doesn't have the goal of, I'm going to make them feel better about their lives when they're done scrolling or reading our content or watching our content. Instead, it's, I just want to make sure that you stay on this platform for as long as possible. So with that said, you're going to see all kinds of things that are tempting to you or draw your interest, or it's kind of like eye candy. It's hard to turn away. I often call it like train wreck theory. People often talk about you can't turn away from a train wreck. It's like when you're driving down the road and you see a car accident, you can't help but turn and look and be interested or curious. And if you're interested and curious or tempted on social media, guess what? You're probably going to give that algorithm some kind of signal, either by watching it for a while or by hitting a like or by giving a comment. And what's going to happen then is it's going to feed you more of that. If you're like me, there's certain things that you find get fed to you more and more often with the idea that you're going to stay on longer because you're tempted and you want to see what's there. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about some things that you want to be careful of and also some things that you can do to help yourself so that you're not sucking away those precious hours. Again, everything in moderation is truly the way to go in life about so many things. And before I want to dive into this, I want to give a shout out to the podcast that really inspired me to put this episode and record this episode. It's the All Pro Dad podcast. I'd highly suggest you check it out. It's one of my favorites. I listen to their content often. It's put out by some really grounded individuals who are good fathers, trying to give out good information so that we can all be better. The organization as a whole, I believe, is part of Tony Dungy, the former football coach and current NFL analyst. It's his brainchild, I guess, along with some other people. And so a couple months ago, they did an episode on the algorithm and the effects that it had on them. And it got me thinking, you know what, maybe I could share a little bit about some information that I've learned and some things that I've learned about myself and from others and push that out to you because I think it's all pretty important stuff. So as I said before, one of the first things to remember is the goal of an algorithm is not to give you stuff that makes you feel good or give you stuff that makes you feel bad. It's to give you stuff that's going to help you stay on their platform. It doesn't matter if it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. The idea is they're going to give you content that's going to get your focus and you're going to have a hard time turning away from it. So for me, when I think about like scrolling through reels, what draws me in? There's really two things, and Instagram and my favorite social media app has definitely figured this out because they keep pumping this content to me. So one is jumping off of things like cliffs into water and just like these high, like bungee jumping, these high dive kinds of things that you'll see Red Bull does, high dive competitions. So the algorithm is constantly feeding that to me and I have a hard time turning away from it. I don't know why. It's intriguing to me, I guess. And it'd be one thing if I watch one or two people jump off a cliff or whatever, but I find myself just scrolling through and I watch more and more of it. It's really just a waste of my time. The other thing that I am completely tempted by, and I'm not proud of this, to be honest with you, street fighting. I don't know why, but I can't turn away. Street fighting. Just two random people who are fighting in the street, and I watch it, and they know I like to watch it. Not that I necessarily like it, I shouldn't say that. They know that I have a hard time turning away from it, and because of that, I keep getting more and more of it. So I'm going to guess you probably have a thing or two in your algorithm that keeps popping up to you, and it's hard to turn away, even though it might not be good for you. Because let's talk real quick about some of the downsides of social media. First, some of the content you get fed can be misleading. It's not always accurate. And what we find is people out on social media are screaming about things or are doing certain things just to get your attention, just to get views, just to get likes, just to get your comments. And it's not always about being accurate. Back in the day, before social media was around, there was this big talk in the journalism world about honest journalism, meaning the importance of giving you accurate information. And journalists still talk about it today, although some apparently have lost those ideals along the way. I'm not so sure why. But you're going to get plenty of slanted views about all kinds of things in social media. So you have to be careful about how much you invest into the truthfulness of certain things. My wife and I often talk about certain people we'll follow on social media. And more times than not, for me at least, I think about I want to listen to people who sound like they're grounded. Just because you yell something loudly or passionately doesn't mean you're right. However, in our society, we are entertained and drawn in to people who do things that sensationalize things. Tendency to not only get drawn in, but believe what they're saying. So just be careful of what's out there in social media because it can often be misleading. And even in life in general, you have people with all kinds of thoughts. So you just always have to be analyzing information you're getting. Second, I'll say you have to understand what is tempting you and is it the best for you to be consuming that content? Is it the best for me to sit and watch guys jump off cliffs? I don't know. It's kind of harmless. The problem is if I get sucked in for hours, which I don't usually do, but if it were to happen, then yes, it's absolutely an issue. And what we'll find more times than not is if we're spending more time on our phones scrolling through things and missing what's happening in our kids' lives or missing what's happening in important aspects of our lives, then it definitely is a problem. So you just kind of have to monitor what is tempting out there. The idea of owning what you know makes you curious, and just be careful because I'm going to talk in a second about what triggers the algorithm to send you more stuff. And you unintentionally most of the time do it and you're not even really thinking about it. So just be careful of what's tempting you. It is definitely an individualized approach when it talks about the algorithm. It's learning you and your basic social media patterns and what you invest your time in. And then it's just going to keep giving you more of that. And it will start to slide in some other interest things so that you can take a look at it and they'll test it and see, do they like this? Something that got me in the past, I don't really watch this now, is this slap fighting, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world. And I've told my kids this, and we've all had good laughs about it. Two grown men, or I guess ladies do it, but it was always men who would show up in my feed, standing there just slapping each other until somebody would get knocked out. It's the most ridiculous thing because unlike boxing or martial arts, MMA, where you're competing and you're trying to protect yourself so you don't only get hit so many times. In this case, you just stand there, take the full brunt of it, and then the person who loses is usually somebody who gets flattened and they're laid out on the floor. which what we now know really means you probably have a concussion. So not brilliant, but I used to watch it because I couldn't turn away. Again, train wreck theory. I just could not turn away from it, just watching these two fools slap each other until somebody drops. I got away from that, thankfully. That's not really much in my feed anymore. And I'll talk more about how I did that in just a couple minutes. But the other thing I will share with you is you really have to be careful about how you interact with your social media, and the algorithm is picking up on your cues one way or another. There's really multiple ways that it does this. First, how long are you watching a reel? And when I say that, I mean, are you watching it in its entirety? Are you watching past a couple seconds? And here's a big one. Are you watching it again? So if something is very tempting and it kind of perks your interest and you watch it and you're like, I'd like to check that out again, and you scroll back through it again, or you just let it run because a lot of social media apps will just let it roll through again, that sends a big time signal to the algorithm like, ooh, I like this. So the amount of time you spend viewing something sends a direct signal to that algorithm about whether you like it or not, as opposed to it pops up in your feed and you see it and scroll right past it. If you do that so many times, the algorithm's going to start to think, they probably aren't that interested in that content. Again, going back to the goal of social media apps, to keep you on their app as long as possible. The next thing I will tell you is be careful what you like. And so when I say that, if you interact by hitting the like button or something similar, you're sending a message to the algorithm that you'd like to have more of that content. That's kind of how that works. And I think most people realize that. However, one of the biggest pieces that I have learned about how an algorithm knows that you're really juiced for the content, it's whether you leave comments or not. And this is kind of where a lot of people have a problem when it comes to social media. So on the plus side, let's say if you're on Facebook and your son's best friend pitches a great game in baseball and his parents post it on Facebook, you might make a comment like, congratulations, that's amazing. And guess what? Even if you didn't interact with those parents before, now all of a sudden, maybe you start to see some of the things that they post. That's not a bad thing. That's pretty great. However, the same can be said for things you don't like, because there's no differentiation here. The algorithm is not a person. It's not analyzing whether you truly enjoy things. It's only analyzing whether you're interacting with it. And if you're interacting with it one way or another, it's going to give you more of that information. So if somebody posts something on Facebook and you don't like it and you scream about it in your comments, even though it's a negative comment, the algorithm's probably not picking up on that, and you might start to see more of their stuff. This is really true when we start talking about reels and how the algorithm feeds you things that might trigger you. So you might just be scrolling through and somebody says something that you do not agree with and it triggers you and you want to give them a piece of your mind. So you put something in the comments and then maybe somebody then comes back and comments right back on top of yours and you fire it right back. And in the end, nobody's going to win that battle because there's nothing but a bunch of keyboard gangsters out on social media. Most people are slinging around negativity, especially in the comments of reels, specifically ones that are designed to stir up emotions. And so unintentionally, even though you don't want to see more of that stuff, you just gave the algorithm a signal that I am willing to interact with this. And if I'm willing to interact with it and tell the algorithm I'm willing to comment on this, in some cases multiple times, you're sending them the signal that you want more of whatever that is coming from that person or those people who are providing that content. It's kind of a vicious cycle when you think about it, really. And what you find is it's hard to break away. I'll be honest, there's been plenty of people on different social media apps that I'll be on where somebody says something and I'm like, you know what? No, they're not right. I want to tell them exactly what I think. And even if I do it in the most respectful way, somebody can come right back on me and give me another comment, and then I go back and forth, and the next thing you know, that person's stuff is in my algorithm, and it takes a little while to get it off. And we'll talk more about what you can do to try to get to the point where you have a selected algorithm that is feeding you the stuff that you actually really do enjoy and maybe in some cases need. But again, the whole idea of the algorithm on your social media app isn't built towards give them stuff that's going to really make them feel great about their day. You have to be careful because you can walk away sometimes from social media feeling worse about your day than you did when you picked up your phone and opened the app. And I think because of all of this, unintentionally, what has ended up happening in social media land is negativity gets sensationalized and gets more interactions, and it gets put out in front of more people because of it. It's not necessarily that Instagram or TikTok are saying, this negative stuff needs to be promoted. It's that more people are interacting with it, more people are watching it for longer periods, and because of all of that, it keeps pumping it out, thinking, hey, they like this content, let's keep it coming. Again, it does feel like a bit of a vicious cycle. Before I give you some tips on how to deal with all of this, I do want to give you this important piece that I have learned the hard way. You're probably not going to win battles out on social media by, being a keyboard gangster or keyboard warrior. You're probably not going to dent much and make people understand the importance of your ideas and your rationality. The best example I can give you is if you go on your favorite app and get involved with sports, you're going to have people tell you why this person stinks, why this team's horrible, and then you're going to have fans of that person or fans of that team banter right back. And in reality, nobody's changing anybody's mind. Everybody stays right where they were. And a lot of people will do things intentionally to try to get you triggered. And it happens often. And because of that, you really have to be careful of your mental health. This is also why it's so important to kind of monitor and have an idea of what your kids are consuming on social media, which granted, I will tell you is not easy at all. But because just like you and I, when we're on our favorite apps, it's giving us information and content that we can't look away from. It's doing the same thing for our kids too. So what do we do? Because this is obviously an issue. What do we do so that we don't necessarily have to be fed junk that we shouldn't be seeing or junk that we don't want to see or just junk that we can't look away from? Well, there's a few things that I've found out. I told you the example of the boneheads who were slapping each other, right? And apparently there's they'll have tournaments and so forth about this. And I kept watching it and I kept watching it. Next thing I know, my whole feed is filled with it. So what did I do? Eventually I was like, I don't really want to watch this. I don't know why I can't look away. I got to have some kind of control. And by the way, I never interacted with that beyond just watching it. That's why viewing in your viewing time on a video actually sends a message to the algorithm. You don't have to interact to send a message. And I never hit thumbs up on any of these slap videos, but it kept coming. And the reason? Because I kept watching. And so what did I do to get that out of my feed? Because it's not there anymore. I scrolled right past it. I forced myself to say, you know what? If it pops up again, I am not looking for half a second. I'm going to scroll right on past it. And I'm not a huge scroller. I don't spend hours and hours doing it like some people do. But just like anybody, you are tempted. And so now if I end up getting a random video like that, I've trained myself to just keep right on going. I don't want to see that. I don't want to send that message to the algorithm like, oh, maybe he's interested in that again. Let's send him more, because I don't want to see that. And it's actually what I need to start doing with this street fighting thing, because I don't know why I keep watching. It's the same reason why I couldn't turn away from slap fighting. I'm watching, fools out in the streets or on the golf courses fight each other over silly things. We're talking grown men fighting each other over the most silly things, acting like kids on a playground, really, which if you've listened to any of my content, that is not what I'm promoting. I'm promoting us as fathers should be good role models. And these knuckleheads are not good role models at all. They're making decisions to fight each other at the drop of a hat over just silly stuff. And I've been sucked in, just like it was with the slap thing. I've been sucked in, and now I have to break that cycle. And so because of that, I have started within the last week just same thing. Scroll right on past it. Scroll right on past it. It pops up. Nope. Not even looking for half a second. And what will happen over the course of a couple weeks to a month, and yeah, it does take a little bit of time, it will eventually, the algorithm's going to start promoting other stuff. So that can be challenging, but it is one tip that I'll tell you. The other thing is don't interact with anything that you don't want to see more of, because If you're triggered by something and you give a comment, it's going to keep coming back. If you hit a plus thumbs up, it's going to keep coming back. So don't interact with content that you don't want to see more of, which is really hard. We're really not wired to just let it go. But that's essentially what you need to do, and at least when it comes to social media. You're probably not going to win any keyboard wars out there. And the last thing I will share with you, and this might be the most important, is you can actually work to train the algorithm with the stuff that you want. So for example, my friend Phil Januszewski, who, by the way, I've interviewed him a couple months ago. He's a great listen, came on this podcast and talked about the importance of finding a work-family life balance, which we all struggle with. So go back and check that out for sure. But Phil Januszewski, all he does is put out just a positive message and positive feel-good stuff every day for all kinds of people. And I can tell you, for me, that's the kind of stuff that I want. So what I have done is purposely done some searches to find some people who will fill my algorithm. And what happens is I start watching more content like that. My algorithm starts getting filled up with more of content like that. And even more importantly than just watching it, start interacting with it. Hit a plus, hit a thumbs up, and definitely comment. And speaking of commenting, if you're watching your favorite follow on social media and it's stuff that you feel like you need and stuff that you enjoy, maybe it's something funny, whatever, comment on it. Even if it's something small and insignificant, you're sending that message to the algorithm. I'm into this. I'm intrigued by it. I'm going to interact with it. So in conclusion, I'll say social media has positives, but it definitely has a slippery slope. You got to try to not let it consume your life. And so I'll close up on this final comment, which means you need to analyze how much of a problem this is in your life. That will figure out a pathway forward for you. So if you're somebody who you find yourself hours and hours on social media, or maybe it's you just find yourself walking away from social media feeling pretty crummy about life in general and it's done a number on your mental health, maybe it's time to take a break. Like put it away completely. Find something else to do with your time. Spend more time with your kids. Listen to podcasts that make you feel better. Figure out something else to do to fill that time. Because if you feel like you can't control it and it's gotten out of hand, then maybe it's time to cut it off completely. However, I think a lot of us are in that moderate mold. Like, it is somewhat of a problem. It's not a huge problem. So what do you do then? Well, you could do something simple like set yourself a timer. You just have to moderate what it is that you're viewing, and you have to moderate the amount of time that you're consuming it. Because as my students will tell you, doom scrolling is not a recipe for success. And I often get that because I wish I spent more time on this assignment, but I was scrolling through social media, doom scrolling. Well, in your case, maybe it's I could have spent an hour throwing the football around with my kids. Instead, I spent the hour sitting down while my son or daughter was playing in the yard and I just scrolled. And don't get me wrong, we all do it. That's my point here. It's so easy to get sucked in. Temptation is all around you to get sucked in and pique your curiosity. And so you got to figure out where you're at on the continuum or like the scale of how significant a problem it is for you. And if it's a significant problem, maybe you cut it off completely. If it's a moderate problem, just start to put some parameters around how much you view or how much content you take in. And if it's triggering you and you're feeling worse, maybe you figure out a different pathway forward, whether it be one of those things like cut it off completely or set timers, or you could maybe train the algorithm to give you stuff that you actually need or enjoy as opposed to making you really upset and angry about. If you like this message today, I can tell you I've got more videos, including one video similar to this on my YouTube channel, Dad's All In Podcast YouTube channel. Hop over there. Speaking of getting involved in comments, I'd love to hear you in the comments there. Send the algorithm the message that you like our content over there. And speaking of sending a message, if you could rate and follow wherever you're listening to this podcast, that would be helpful too. That's how our content gets pushed out to other parents, and other parents get to consume this. And also feel free to share this by word of mouth. Hey, I really enjoyed this Dad's All In podcast. Tip off another dad, tip off another family member, tip off a friend, let them know. And if you ever want specific topics that you'd like explored on this podcast, feel free. Shoot me an email, dadsallinpodcast@gmail.com. I hope you have a great week out there. Remember, as hard as it is sometimes, this is our most important job of being a dad. Hug your kids, tell them you love them, keep building them up, and try to get some parameters on our social media. Let's learn from our mistakes and get better as we move forward. Have a great week. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for sticking around. If you got any questions you want answered on the show, or you just want some feedback or want to share some ideas, shoot me an email, dadsallinpodcast@gmail.com, or send me a DM on any of the socials @rechargedfamily. Thanks for listening.